You're live.
We're live.
We're live.
Let me put my lanyard on.
Oh, wow.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Hey, I got this on because I just came back from Atlanta where we had the Janome launch. Whoop, whoop, whoop.
Wow.
So I don't know if I'm not going to wear that the whole time. Hey, you guys know my name. If not, I'm Joshua. This is Joann, and that's Tony. You'll meet her in a second.
We're all here.
Yeah. Do you know anything about? Do you follow like Janome's launch? Do you have any idea about?
I try not to because that encourages me to buy a new sewing machine.
Smart. Well, and truthfully, you know, if you're a Bernina person, then you're going to probably be more looking for the Bernina stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So Janome is obviously, we have been a baby lock dealer, and have no fear, we're still a baby lock dealer. We love our baby locks, but Janome has recently been added to our lineup, and I've talked about it for the past, I don't know, how long has it been now?
6 months.
6 months almost. But
do you mind if I ask a question at this point?
Feel
What
free.
made you decide on Janome?
I sold Janomes for 4-ish, 5 years in Louisville.
Mm-hmm.
And I love them. I know how good they are.
Mm-hmm.
But certain brands work well together.
Mm-hmm.
Certain brands do not because they compete.
Mm-hmm.
It's pointless to carry Baby Lock and Brother.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that'd be
You know what I mean?
because they're made by the same people, in case you didn't know that.
For the most, made in the same place for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But so there are certain Janome machines that fill in the gaps of Baby Lock and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah. And Janome is so well made that I have no problem standing by them and supporting them.
Mm-hmm.
Because we can sell them and they're not going to come back in for service all the time because they're not going to be breaking, they're not going to break.
So people are going to be happy.
Absolutely. They're easy to use,
Mm-hmm.
very user-friendly. That's a big thing. I mean, so Baby Lock, you hear me say it all the time. Baby Lock is by far the most user-friendly machine.
Right.
Still. And I love Janome, but they just are. They're intuitive. Janome is right there. And honestly, Janome, since we have brought them on, today, in fact, is releasing all these new machines that they've changed everything about the look and the way that you navigate for well, not everything, but they've made them even more user-friendly, which is really cool. So that's why I went and found out about the new Janome machines.
Okay.
I don't want to butcher it, and I don't have one here to show you. Hey, but there's 4 new machines, and it was the big one that everybody was excited about was the Janome M8, the Continental M8 Professional is the official term. So you've seen the M7 that we have,
Right.
13.5 inches. It is the largest throat space of any domestic machine. They say portable, and I'm like, it's heavy.
Maybe.
It's heavy.
If you're young and buff.
Yeah, I'm young and buff, right? It's heavy. but truthfully, so that's the number one. And then they also came out with an M6, which is really nice. Now, the reason I like the M6 idea is because it's a price point. You can still get that big throat space, but you don't have to spend as much for the top of the line.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest takeaway from all of here, we'll unveil something. The entire convention was that they now have 2 machines that are ASR compatible. 2 are ASR compatible.
Oh.
So the CM17, which we actually currently have, is also ASR compatible. So
for those of us who have no idea what that means.
I was getting ready to say, do you know what ASR is?
No.
So do you remember the BSR?
Oh, yeah.
Bernina stitch regulator?
Uh-huh.
This is the Janome's version.
Oh.
And it comes
in a beautiful box.
A really nice case. Yeah, isn't that nice?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I'm not going to dog Bernina because I love Bernina. And I've been sewing with that stitch regulator for a while, and I got used to it. I think I like this better. I'll be honest with you. So that is the actual stitch regulator. That's the foot. And we did some, what do you call it?
Embroidery?
No.
Binding? What?
Where it mirrors it.
Echo?
Echoing, thank you. That's the echoing foot on there. So I got to play with this a lot on the new machines, and it's so easy to use. People complain about it. It beeps at you. If you're going too fast, this you will find very, very easy to use. So I'm excited that the M8 offers, because currently the M7 did not. The M8 now is ASR compatible.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Looking for the words. Also, they came out with a 9410 and a 9480. The easy way to remember is the 8. Tony pointed that out. So the 9480, which if you're not necessarily wanting to spend as much for the M8 and you don't need the 13.5 inch throat space, you can get the N9480, and it's also ASR compatible. This is a big deal for quilters. People who A, maybe don't have the space for a long arm, or B, don't want to spend 25 grand. Not taking away your long arm business, because there's definitely a place for that. And you're not going to put a king size quilt on your domestic machine for the most part. I wouldn't. But it's really nice that people who want to do art quilts and they want to do thread painting, you know, this is a big deal.
You know, it's especially with a 13.5-inch throat space, it's very easy to do baby quilts, or even, you know, throw size on your sewing machine. Those are very manageable. Getting into the big ones, I don't like having to manage all the fabric, but those smaller quilts, very easy to do that. And I even encourage my students to do that.
Yeah, don't be afraid to just try it. Pedal to the metal and go.
Yeah.
Turn the speed up and just have fun. But I will say that, and I've played a lot with thread painting and free motion, and I'm still, if I have the option for a stitch regulator, I'm going to use it.
Really? For the thread painting?
Yeah, it's just all the stitches look the same.
Oh,
now, thread painting, it doesn't matter as much because, well, my style, you've seen, it's kind of messy. And
I like your style.
Well, thank you. So I don't care so much about that, but if I'm going to do any free motion, I do like the stitches to look the same.
Okay.
The visible stuff. So I'm super excited. And unfortunately, I don't have one here. If you have not ever seen the M7, though, we do have that in stock. You got to come in and just sit down, and 13.5 inches is big. It's awesome.
How soon will you
And
have
it's fast.
one of the new ones in?
So, thank you for pointing that out. So the new 9410 and 9480, all these numbers I got to remember. The two new, what are they called? The memory crafts are being shipped today. So those are available now. The new M8 and M6 aren't going to be available for pickup until like October. So they're getting ahead of that one. But they were there. We got to play with them. They're awesome. I mean, they took really what was probably the best domestic machine and just improved on it by adding this. Because Tony and she has an M7. She's like, well, if only it could use this. So now it can, but it's just called an M8. So no, the M7, unfortunately, there's no way to use this on an M7. There's no conversion. You just can't do it. So you have to trade it in and buy a new M8. But anyway, I'm really excited about the direction that Janome is going. And to answer your question even more, it's been a while since Janome's really come out with some like new things. And so in my opinion, and again, no offense to Janome, but they were a little bit behind in times in the technology. So it's really cool to see them stepping it up. Just so happens as soon as we start carrying them, it's like it was planned. And speaking of Janome, they are still giving away a loft sewing machine. Literally, all you have to do is come in, scan the QR code. Tony, is that okay on the camera?
Yeah, I can see it.
I don't think you can scan it if you pause it. Nice try. You're going to have to come in and see us. Come in. But yeah, literally, there's no strings attached. All you got to do is come in, scan the QR code, and you're in the running for a free machine. And this is a really neat new machine that they released, geared towards, I think, more the younger generation, garment sewer, maybe 100 stitches. It's awesome. So we had fun in Janome, but I'm happy to be back. Yeah. You want to talk about some new fabric before we jump into what you got going on?
If you're into fall fabric, look at this.
Is this the first time you've seen this?
I saw it on Friday.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, it was just, I had fabric envy.
By the way, good morning, Debbie. Good morning, Virginia. It's quiet on Facebook today and YouTube.
What are you getting there?
I think this one might be my favorite, actually. Here, I'll let you.
This one you need to unroll just a little bit.
Yeah, the border print.
Yeah.
So we have, this is one of the newer lines. I did not get the entire line of this one. It is so pretty, but these that I kind of handpicked, I think, were enough. It got a little repetitive, so I just picked out my favorites.
They're just gorgeous fall colors.
Yeah, in the beginning, their color combinations are incredible. Isn't that nice?
Mhm.
I love it when they do just a hint of like the image, the print,
Yeah.
so that it's not boring, but it's not going to be overpowering. It's a
Yeah,
really
exactly.
good
Gives you
complementary.
texture and-
Yeah.
Pretty.
Good morning, Bonnie. So that is one of the new collections that we got in. We have an entire new in the beginning collection coming soon, which Jan is in the process of making a quilt for us. So we'll have that hopefully in time. Well, no, not hopefully. We will definitely have it in time for the Quilt Fest, which if you're not on the radar for quilt shows, Quilt Fest is September 14th, 15th, and 16th, right? Yeah.
Coming up soon.
Yeah.
I know everybody in my class are starting to make lists of things that they want to see, things that they want to buy, things that they're all excited about it.
Awesome. We've only done it once and we loved it. It was a great show. And we're taking the same thing, almost the same as last year. We did arrow and kangaroo, so we'll have the nice cabinet. So if you're in the market for a cabinet, quilt show pricing is the way to go. It destroys all the sales all year long. So if you're in the market, definitely come and talk to us because the quilt show pricing is the time to do it. And then we're also taking AccuQuilt, which we didn't get to take last time at Quilt Fest. We're taking Caterpillar, which is really cool. And then, of course, we're going to have some of our fun fabric that we always take. So I'm excited.
Speaking of which.
What a segue. So the reason we actually have these two panels, mainly because they're two of my favorites, but all of our panels are currently on sale. So buy two, get one free, or if you just want one, it's 20% off. We've got a lot of really cool panels. Some are older, some are newer, and we just really want to blow them out so I can bring in a bunch more. Yeah, right.
That's right.
Newer panels. So panels, the sales come in waves, it seems like. So we've got some really cool panels. I love the artsy panels, the art prints. And Joann, you just had a class where
we did panels.
You did panels. How did that?
I don't know. Is it just you, Tony, or I guess you and Maria are doing some beautiful quilts here that are using panels. So there's a lot of great samples around the shop just to give you some ideas of what to do with them. I love this. And if you're into modern art and like the Gustav Klimt stuff, this is just such a beautiful piece here. And I think there's a little bit of complementary fabric to go with it in the shop, but it's just such a pretty piece, and there's lots of neat panels to go other than that.
Yeah, people just look at panels and sometimes they go, oh, I don't want to chop it up because it's a piece of art, it's beautiful, so they just put borders. Awesome. And some people go, I want to, what is that, hack and whack, right? Stack and whack. Yeah, whatever. There's like 10 different names for one thing.
Or the other thing you can do is a combination of the two. You can buy two panels of the same thing and take your first panel, use that in your center, do just a small stop border around it, and then take the second one, cut it up in squares, and put that around the outside.
Oh, that's cool.
And then you have a border that's interesting, and it matches what you've got there, and you don't have to buying extra fabric or whatever. It's
good point. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, especially for something like this.
Yeah, so that I loved what little bits I got to see of the panel class because a few people who weren't on your normal regular quilt group came in and just really started from scratch from scratch. So it was cool to, the whole point of these classes is to get inspired, feed off of people, and your group does that so well.
It was a fun class because mainly what I taught as far as panels and what you do with them is to look in the panel and see if there's some sort of feature in the panel that you can pull out to the borders and make the borders interesting. You can always do just plain borders going around, and a lot of times that's really all you need. But to bring out different features in the quilt, for example, you have the circles here and the swirls and things like that. There's lots that you could do with something like that in the border to make it look really cool.
Absolutely. Awesome. Speaking of Joann's classes, this is almost full, but I believe you said there's one spot left. Woo! All right. One spot left. Grab it quick. So August the 18th, collage quilt, the Laura Heine way. It's been a while since we've done this.
Yeah.
We've done it a few times, and it's always awesome. These are my favorite types of quilts, mainly because there's no sewing. until the very end, which I've said a
No
bunch of times.
part.
Yeah. Well, because it's just fun. You're getting messy, and I don't know. It's very hands-on, and
Yeah, and
I
it's
love it.
you know, I always start out the class by saying this is where you get to channel your inner third grader,
Yeah.
and because that's all you're doing is cutting up. It's like art class from third grade where you cut up little pieces of paper and stuck them on another piece of paper and made a picture out of it.
It's
Which
so
is
true.
essentially what you're doing here with fabric. And I tell you, any class I've ever taught in this, the women just become totally engrossed in it and just have a wonderful time. And just it's always fun.
Yeah, and we have a handful of Laura Heine patterns. You don't have to just do the sewing machine or the featherweight. I think isn't that what it's called, the featherweight? I think that's the name of the pattern. But you obviously you can. I don't think we have any more of the featherweight patterns. So if you were interested, if you're either already signed up and don't have your pattern, or you're the last person to sign up, call us. We might be able to get one in before. There's no promises, but there's tons of patterns that you can use. There's some really. I'm waiting for somebody to do the deceased, right? Isn't that what it is? The skeleton
Oh yeah,
with the hair,
yeah.
deceased. Yeah, it's cute. So
And it's amazing when you open up a Laura Heine pattern. Anyway, it's just a line drawing. And when you work with that, you realize how easy it is to do your own line drawing and do your own design and come up with your own way of doing it. You don't, you know, it's Laura Heine just turns out all kinds of great stuff. And I love her work, but you can do it yourself too.
Yep. We actually had up in Louisville our first collage quilt. The lady's like, I really wanted a butterfly. And I'm like, well, lay your patternese down. And I drew her a butterfly. And I was like, there's your pattern.
Yeah.
You know, it's
totally possible.
You're just filling in the shape.
That's
essentially.
Right. It's kind of like drawing, coloring in your coloring book.
Right. So I'm excited that that's going to be full. I'm excited for everything that we're doing. I'm just generally excited. That's right. Okay. I think that's it for me. Janome launch was the big thing. Classes, quilt shows coming up. So the floor is yours.
Okay.
What do you guys want to talk about?
Well, today, a few weeks ago, I did this thing where I had the cards with the different letters on them, and they all stood for something. And one of the cards had FOB, which stood for fear of binding. And I started thinking about that, and I see that all the time, and I don't understand it. So I thought that what I would do is interview Tony and ask her, because she teaches. She's taught a class here, and I know she teaches doing binding. And I was going to ask her what it is that people are afraid of. Why is there this fear of binding?
I'll step over here and let you do it.
Okay.
You know what scares me about it?
What?
The straight lines.
The straight lines. Okay.
Sewing straight.
Mm-hmm.
Sewing straight terrifies me. You ask me to do some swirls, I'm okay. It's the straight lines. Because it feels like this is the end of it. It's got to be perfect. I don't want to mess it up. I've come this far. And this straight line it's difficult for me. So that's my reason.
Okay. Those are valid reasons.
Honestly, I think the main reason is doing miter corners. And then the other thing is people don't want to hand stitch nowadays. They all want to get it done quick. So they're afraid to find, that final stitch on the front or the back, however they want to do it, to make sure it's straight, like you said. So I think those are the two biggest fears. And it might be just a sense of accomplishment too. I think we sabotage ourselves thinking we are almost done. If I finish it, that means that, it's on to the next step or a sense of accomplishment. But I think that's one of the big things. And the other thing is on how to connect everything together.
Okay.
Because there's so many different ways to do all things in binding as well. So
yeah, and I think that's a really good point, that there's so many ways to do it and you kind of get confused which is the right way. And what I tell people all the time is that quilting is an art. It's not a science. So let's say you see somebody that does something on YouTube and it makes sense to you and you want to try that. That's fine. That's a great way to do it. And then if that doesn't work, try something else. And one of the things I heard was similar to what Josh was just saying is, I'm almost done and the quilt is so pretty right now. I don't want to mess it up. Right. And so I brought in a couple of things.
Lots of tools.
Yeah, all sorts of things. So I brought in a couple of things. One of the things that I really like is I like using a glove. when I'm feeding it through the machine.
Well, that's a good idea.
And the gloves have kind of a grippy side on them, and they have machine quilting gloves. Fons and Porters puts out this glove. Do you carry a glove here? No. Okay.
We do have some gloves.
Oh, do we?
The quilt gloves, yeah. I like the Martelli paddles for free
Uh-huh.
motion, but this is a little bit different.
Yeah, it's
This
a little bit
technique,
different.
yeah.
You're trying to hold on to your fabric. But anyway, some sort of glove on your left hand. You don't need it on your right hand so much, but on your left hand. And that just helps to stabilize your fabric, and it helps to, you've got the weight of this huge quilt or whatever size quilt, and it's got all the batting and it's all quilted. So it's heavy and it's bulky and it's hard to work with. So if you use a glove, that helps to keep it nice and stable so that once again, with that straight line,
Mhm.
it helps to keep your straight line. So what kind of foot do you use on your sewing machines?
I do use a walking foot.
Do you use the walking foot for putting it on?
I have an M7, so I have a really narrow walking foot.
Uh-huh.
I also have a special walking foot that I can
Uh-huh.
do that with. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that I have figured out is that part of learning how to do a binding is figuring out what your machine will do. What is the best foot on your machine? Not the best one on mine, but the best one on yours. The best settings, the best whatever. It's a
That's a good point, because not all machines are the same.
No.
Not all walking feet are the same.
And most of the time, you can't use a real full walking foot on this because you're trying to do that 1/4 inch seam.
Mhm.
So it always gets caught. It's not.
Yeah.
It's not easy feeding it like that.
Right. And I like a little bit wider than a 1/4 inch. So but I do agree, especially when you go to turn it and you're doing this side, I agree that a walking foot is like, why use anything else? You're much more successful with that. What else do you find is important to?
Well, I know this sounds really silly. I learned an internet trick a long, long time ago. I have pets. I think most people have pets. And I don't like my binding sitting on the floor when I'm sewing it on. So I either use a basket or I use a plastic shopping bag. I'll stick it under the throat and slide my little accessory box around it.
I love that.
And so it's hanging like this and it's like not hitting the floor. So that's one of my favorite tips. And
Yeah.
I learned it from the internet, so it has to be true.
Yeah, that's right. Well, like it's unraveling.
Right.
From,
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's cool.
So you don't have to sit there and try to fight with it and try to keep it in your lap. I know I've seen the Bobbin Buddies, the
Right.
ones, the little dolls. Those are kind of cute too. But
I don't know how to use them. I do have one, and she's really cute. She sits right on the sewing machine. She watches me put binding on, but I don't know how to use her. I think that's a great idea. I've used a basket, but most of all, I tend to throw it on the floor, and I have to be careful because I do have a dog who thinks it's a toy.
gotta have cats.
So they would think that. So that's a really good thing, and that kind of keeps it off the floor, but easily movable. I do like that. I'm going to try that. Okay, what else?
So I'm looking at yours, like doing the miter. So like I said, one of the other things people are afraid of is doing a miter corner.
Mhm.
So I always stop a 1/4 inch from the edge
Mhm.
and then do exactly what you've done here. You
Mhm.
started on the top.
So and you? We'll do this one first. Here I have one. Okay, so here. Oh, I'm here, right?
Yep.
So, and I saw this kind of neat little trick. If you're really concerned about it, it's actually very easy to do those mitered corners. But I was watching this video, and what she made was a little template out of template plastic. And it has a 1/4 inch line drawn along the
I
bottom,
see that.
and it has another line drawn along the angle there. And so what you do is when you're still a little ways away from the end, you take your little template. Why does this never work the way I want it to? And you measure your 1/4 inch. So if you want to be really exact, you can get that 1/4 inch by just placing that line right along the edge of your quilt, along the edge that you're heading towards. And then you stop and you place a pin there and you stop right there. And then once you do that, now do you do it where you sew out to the corner? Okay. So you can do one of two things here. You can stop right there at the 1/4 inch and then turn your quilt and sew to the corner. I personally, I find that too much stuff to move around at one time. So I don't do it that way. I just stop right there at a 1/4 inch away from the edge of your quilt. So you have a little bit of a quilt fabric showing there. And then you're going to turn your binding away from the quilt. So now it's going to make a straight line going across the top of your quilt and going across here. This should be straight, and your angle here should be a right angle. Well, if you're not getting that, if you feel like you're not, that's not working for you, you can place the straight line that you've drawn on your template right along the edge of your quilt and fold this back on it like that. And you'll get that nice right angle right there. And then you bring your straight edge over here, along here, and fold this back, and you fold it back right along the edge.
Oh, that's very nice. That's very cool too.
And then you just pin it. You can use clips or you can use a pin, whatever you like. I usually like to pin right there to hold it in place until I get it back under the foot, and then pin it a little bit further down too to keep that keep the binding from moving about like that. So it's pinned like that. You turn it this way and you just start sewing a 1/4 inch from the edge and sew straight down. And you're just going to do that on every corner. It works pretty nicely. Nice. And then you just do that all the way around. So when you get to here, now tell me about what you do here. Let's say we can bring this, it's not sewn, but we can bring it. So you leave a little bit of, you're going to leave a tail, and I leave at least a foot here from the end of one side to the beginning of the other. And so that I can bring the two sides together. Now I've seen two ways of doing this. One where they do that fold and they tuck it inside.
Oh, I hate that.
You can tell a real quilter.
Because it leaves bulk, and
Yes,
it's a straight line versus if you sew it on the bias. Now, when you put I teach them how to do it on the sew it on the bias, not end to end. But no, this is where people videotape me because they forget. How often do you do binding? So unless you have 10 quilts, you have to do it one time. I visualize a spot and normally put a pin in the middle, and I cut this end to be like somewhere in this middle. Then I make sure it doesn't matter which side, they have to overlap the width of the binding. That's the key element, I think. You have to overlap the width of the binding, your two ends. And then you're going to open them flat and put them right sides together and sew that bias strip or biased angle. So yeah. Yeah. And that's you'll see other people do. There's something with, and I don't even understand how they do it. There's something with a fold where this gets folded back and you tuck you fold it back when you first start putting it on. And then when you get to the end, you tuck the other side in. And I've seen people do that and it works beautifully. It's just a beautiful end to it. I don't know how they do it because as far as I'm concerned, when you do that, you get a whole lot of bulk in there, just like Tony just said. And to me, it's much easier to do it this way. What else? Oh, when you sew your two ends together, so you have, when you're initially making your binding strip, so I have two ends sewn together here, and you can see that the fold, that the seam is pressed out. And I always press my seam out because one of the things that you really have to be concerned with when you do your binding is that you're going to have layer upon layer upon layer of fabric. So you want to do everything you can to decrease that. So I press the fold out. The next thing I do is when I'm doing this portion, I always decrease the size of my stitch, the length of my stitch. So because when you press your fold out, you have a little bit more stretch there. There's a little bit more likelihood if you have longer stitches to be able to see the stitches in the seam, and you don't want to do that. So you make sure it's a little bit smaller. Let's see.
And then when you bring the two together, you bring your two fabrics together, and you're going to place them. That's wrong.
Right sides together.
Oh, maybe that'll help. No, it doesn't. Anyway, so you bring your two edges together like this so that they form a right angle. And then you're going to sew from outside corner to outside corner. If you sew from outside corner to inside corner, you're just going to get another right angle like this, but you want a straight line. So you sew from outside corner to outside corner, and you want to make sure that you start right in the crux of that. Because if you start right where the two fabrics meet at that square point, then you're going to have a straight line. If you start a little off, then you're going to have a little jiggity jag with your fabric, where one piece comes like this and the other piece will be above it. So you want to try and keep those straight. The way you keep them straight is by starting right in the corner. What else?
That's it.
That's it. It's I think binding doesn't ruin your quilt, but it can certainly make it look better. And it's certainly a design feature with your quilt. You can do the flange binding. You can do just a binding that complements what you've got. You can do a binding that's the same as like I could have done a binding that was the same as this fabric here so that you really wouldn't see it. Or you can do something that complements it and you end up with it just becomes another design feature in your quilt like this. And so they're fun to work with. It's really fun, I think, when it's all done and you look at it and you think, this is finished. And it's always amazing to me, you make your blocks and your blocks look really cool. And then you put your blocks together and your quilt looks really cool. And you think, oh, wow, this is really cool. And then you have it quilted and it looks even better. And then you put your binding on and it just looks gorgeous. And I just really encourage you, if you've got a stack of quilts that need binding, work on it, because you're just going to love what you end up with. And it's going to make you feel just so much better. Kind of lightens that load.
It's the frame.
That's right.
It's the final touch, which is why it made me nervous. Now, I haven't done enough, to be fair, and Tony showed me a way. It was very easy. There was nothing difficult about it. It was a mental hurdle that I had to get over.
And you don't have to use straight stitches either. You can use a serpentine stitch for your top stitch.
That's right.
Zigzag.
Which is what I should do.
Yeah, and if you're concerned about these corners, getting these corners just right, take like a little medicine bottle or something and then just curve that. Put a little curve there, and you can have a nice little curve. And once again, another little neat design feature. And then you don't have to worry about that miter. You can worry about that on the next quilt.
Nice. Those are good tips. Don't be afraid of binding.
No.
That's the lesson.
No fobs.
No fobs.
No fobs. That's right. Awesome. And I have to apologize. I was on the Cut Up and Sew crew page, and I was like, there's only one person here, and I walked over there and I was like, oh my gosh. So I didn't say good morning to half of you all, so my apologies. Good morning, everybody. There's a bunch of people on the regular page.
Oh wow.
Yeah, technology,
Cool.
It's awesome when it works. Yeah.
Yes.
Linda's in PA. We'll have fun in PA. I don't think I saw any questions, Tony. If you just want to make sure we're not ignoring anybody, I think we're okay. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a call, or I don't know what your next. Do we have a binding class in the works anywhere?
It's in I think October.
October, so it's a little ways
It's
out, but
quilting for dummies.
Oh yeah, the quilting for dummies, which it's fun. That is neat because the quilting for dummies every other Friday ish. If the topic is binding, inevitably you'll end up talking about something else, quilting related.
We just did accurate cutting on Friday.
Accurate cutting, cool, nice.
And we talked about applique at the end of that. So yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
Fantastic. Those are great tips and tricks. Thank you. New Genomi's coming soon. Quilt Fest. Whoop whoop. Panels on sale. Collage quilt. One person left.
I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
It is going to be fun. So I think that's it. You guys have an amazing day. Live to create. Hey. Yeah. And thanks. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Bye now.
Bye.
Bye now.